Just gonna wait for a couple to jump on. Just give me a comment if you're there, if you can hear me. Just got onto the Wi-Fi, so there shouldn't be any more problems with the internet. Whoever's just come on, if you could just leave a comment and let me know that you can hear me all right. We should be transmitting okay now. I'm on the Wi-Fi. So if anyone's on there, just leave a comment, let me know you can hear me. Hey Joe, thank you. Right, so I'm just going to go really quickly through it again from the beginning, just in the interest of keeping this as an entire video, whole video. So, hey Sean. So basically, yeah. So I'm Lucas. I just want to introduce myself. The last 8 years of my working life was 2 years in the Army Reserve, 3 years in the infantry, and 3 years in the commandos. Serve my country, I love my country, which is why I'm doing these videos. And another reason I'm doing this video tonight is because a person who has been doing a lot of hard work to stand up for the rights of the Australian people, unbeknownst to them and behind the scenes, has been arrested for what I was told is travelling. So the video tonight is going to be on your rights to travel, your rights to freedom of movement, and we're going to talk about that according to our Constitution and the Law Dictionary, and also want to touch on the new law that they attempted to pass yesterday regarding treachery and international laws. I'm going to read some definitions to clear things up for anyone who is unsure, which is probably majority of the people, as I was. I'm going to use case law. I'm going to talk about the human rights that we have, and I'm just asking everyone to put aside their common beliefs and to be open to the facts that are being presented to you. And do not base your findings or beliefs on your opinions of me as a person, or if what I say challenges your beliefs. Do not allow your emotional state to interfere with the information coming through. I ask that you take the information on board and do your own research, do your own homework. Some people you may want to research is Wayne Glue, Brendan Thompson, Santos Bonacci. There's another video out there called What the FUQ, so what the fuck, what the frequently unanswered questions it stands for. Highly recommend you watch that. Scott Bartell, and I know I'm missing someone. There's many more out there. Google search common law, it'll all come up. The first thing I want to talk about is the validity of... Actually, I want to start with a maxim of law. An Admiralty court has no jurisdiction over those questions which are determined by the common law. That is a maxim of law. Admiralty laws come under the common law. The common law is supreme. The common law is what protects the human beings, the people, and protects their rights. I'm also doing this video because we seem to have a government in exile which is being run by a foreign corporation, and they are systematically and very rapidly removing the rights of every single individual of this country. And I cannot stand by in silence and watch as this happens. If I do, I am just as bad as the people doing it. So I'm just going to start. Section 2 of the 1989 Roads and Traffic Act states that the Act is valid upon assent or royal assent. Royal assent can only be granted by the Governor-General on behalf of the Queen, and if the Act does not contain that, it is an invalid Act. Or the Act is pertaining to the government officials that are bound by those laws by way of their office or alleged office. That Act binds them. They are bound to these acts, not the free individual human being that resides in Australia, which is the majority of people in Australia. I just want to read this out for any judges or magistrates or anyone out there. But a person, according to the 1914 Crimes Act, Section 34, any person who, A, being a judge or magistrate and being required or authorised by law to admit any person accused of an offence against the law of the Commonwealth to bail without reasonable excuse and in abuse of his office, requires excessive and unreasonable bail, or being a judge or magistrate wilfully and perversely exercises federal jurisdiction in any matter in which he has a personal interest, shall be guilty of an offence. Imprisonment for 2 years. So if there's any judges or magistrates out there who is not offering anyone the correct bail, what's the word? The correct bail, I'm having a mind blank here. Basically, bail has to be attainable by the person who is being charged. So regardless of, there is no set bail, bail must be set and it must be reachable for the person who has been charged and who is being held. So any judge or magistrate that does not afford that to anyone, for example, Brendan Thompson, who is currently in incarceration, who is being held unlawfully, any judge who does not move according to law is liable for imprisonment up to 2 years. The law around the passing of new laws by Parliament, this is regarding yesterday's law. So it is by the act of the Crown alone that the Parliament can be assembled. So the Crown, this is according to the Constitution, the Crown or the monarchy is the highest authority, and that is what gives Parliament any authority. The only occasions on which the Lords and Commons have met by their own authority were previously to the restoration of King Charles II and at the Revolution in 1688. What is the rule of law? Some people may be confused. What is the law? The rule of law, a concept with several related meanings. At its most general, a legal regime under which every person in a given jurisdiction is subject to the laws of that jurisdiction. We're going to get into what a person is. More specifically, a legal regime under which governmental officials, legislative, judicial, and particularly executive, including the sovereign head of government, are subject to the law and exercise their powers only pursuant to laws authorising them to do so. That is the rule of law according to the Australian Oxford Law Dictionary. No government official, particularly the executive, being the police, none of them are exempt from the law, ever. That is the rule of law, according to the Australian Oxford Law Dictionary. In fact, they are even more subject to the law because they are the ones that are employed to uphold the law. So in order to uphold the law, they must know the law. And if they don't know the law, they shouldn't be working where they're working. What are rights? Rights are authoritative claims or entitlements based on legal or moral norms. They typically protect the vital interests or essential characteristics of individuals or groups against encroachment by the state or others. Encroachment is when they are systematically infringing upon your rights by issuing you with fines and infringement notices for things that you already have a right to do. That is what encroachment is. It is in the Oxford Law Dictionary because it happens. It has happened historically. It is happening today. This is no surprise. To some people it may be. It is in the dictionary because it is a possibility of happening. It is in the forefront of the mind of the person who wrote the dictionary. This is not a fairy tale. This is not something that we have made up. This is the law. In regards to Brendan, who has been arrested for travelling, is what I'm told. The right of way, by definition, is the right of a person to pass and repass over public roads or private land in order to gain access to some point beyond. Australian Oxford Law Dictionary. Okay, I'm going to get into a couple more definitions before we get into the case studies and the facts about Brendan and his unlawful arrest. Liberty, broadly, the absence of constraint on action. Thus, liberty of the subject is absence of constraint on individuals acting as they please. Absence of constraint on individuals acting as they please. Law necessarily restricts liberty, but according to the liberal tradition, these restrictions should not go further than required. Constitutional law protects liberty by placing limits on government power. Liberty to apply in the context of courts is power parties to return to court for more detailed orders pursuant to previous order. Liberty and government being restricted by the Constitution. Here we have a common theme where government is restricted to the Constitution. Not only that, they are bound by all laws equally, if not more so, than the average citizen or the commoner. Okay. Now I get a couple of my things from the Human Rights Declaration, or Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now some people question its validity in this country, and I'm just going to say this. According to the Oxford Australian Law Dictionary, human rights instruments, Australia is signatory to several instruments relating to human rights. And it goes on, it lists several. But I want to read this one out. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights. That is this. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We are a signatory to this. And before I jump into that, I'm going to quickly read human rights culture. This is another definition from the Australian Oxford Law Dictionary. A shift in the thinking of governments and their advisors towards a fundamental awareness of human rights as a whole of government approach. So we are signatory to this, and there's a few that I would like to read out. Article 2. Everyone is entitled to all the rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration, without distinction of any kind, such as race, colour, sex, language, religion, political or other opinion, national or social origin, property, birth or other status. Now that is important, other status. Some of you know what that means. but your status may be, it could be your marriage status, it could be your status as a person, your whatever your status may be. Furthermore, no distinction shall be made on the basis of the political, jurisdictional, or international status of the country or territory to which a person belongs, whether this territory be an independent, such as myself, or a trust, or a non-self-governing territory, as we seem to be in at this time, or under any other limitation of sovereignty. So there is absolutely no limitation of sovereignty in accordance with the Universal Declaration of Human Rights. We are all entitled to all rights and freedoms set forth in this declaration. Number 3, everyone has the right to life, liberty, and security of the person. They shall not be locked up without trial, without due course of law. Article 4, no one shall be held in slavery or servitude. Slavery and the slave trade shall be prohibited in all their forms. Well, we're all held in slavery. The definition of slavery, basically, we are all slaves. If we do not pay unlawful taxes, we are locked up at gunpoint. Our liberties are taken away. We are slaves. The only difference between us and 100 years ago is they might have used whips back then. Now they use guns. And they use it under the cover of their pretend uniform, which we spoke about last night. No one shall be subjected to torture or cruel, inhumane, or degrading treatment or punishment. All are equal before the law and are entitled without any discrimination to equal protection of the law. All are entitled to equal protection against any discrimination in violation of this declaration and against any incitement to such discrimination. I might read this one out at another time, but I'm just going to get to Article 13. This one is important in the case of Brendan. Article 13, everyone has the right to freedom of movement and residence within the borders of each state. Also, everyone has a right to leave any country, including his own, and return to his country. And everyone has a right to seek and enjoy in other countries asylum from persecution of their own country. This right may not be invoked in the case of prosecutions genuinely arising from non-political crimes or from acts contrary to the purposes and principles of the United Nations. There's many more interesting ones on here. I'm going to do a video alone on this Universal Declaration of Human Rights, because it's really important that people understand that, and that they understand that we are signatories to that. Freedom of movement, Australian Oxford Law Dictionary. A person's freedom to travel and to change residence within a state and to leave a state without regulation by the state. I'm going to say that again. Without regulation by the state. Regulation by the state is the imposition of driver's licenses, of taxes. That is regulation. Speed limits, all that. It's all regulations. Freedom of speech. A person's freedom to express an opinion without regulation by the state. It is very clear. Without regulation by the state. Brendan Thompson's case. Freedom from arbitrary arrest and imprisonment. A person's right to be detained by the state only according to law. Freedom from arbitrary detention. What is arbitrary? Arbitrary it means in an arbitrary manner, as fixed or done capriciously or at pleasure, without adequate determining principle, not founded in the nature of things, non-rational, not done or acting according to reason or judgment, depending on the will alone, absolute in power, capriciously, tyrannical, and despotic. Also, without fair, solid, and substantial cause, that is, without cause based upon the law. That's arbitrary. Freedom from arbitrary arrest and imprisonment. So if Brennan has been arrested for travelling, which is what I'm told, that is an arbitrary arrest. It is not lawful. Freedom from discrimination. A person's right not to be subject to differential treatment on the basis of a personal characteristic. Freedom from torture and cruel, inhumane or degrading treatment. A person's right not to be subjected to torture or cruel, inhumane or degrading treatment. I would say that being removed from your home for exercising your right is absolutely torture, cruel and inhumane, degrading treatment. We have freedom of choice, whether we exercise our rights or whether we participate in their corporate agenda. Freedom of choice, a person's freedom to choose without state regulation. And then we have freedom of communication on government and political matters, the extent to which a government is limited in regulating communication that is for political purposes. It is a specific aspect of freedom of speech which the Australian High Court has inferred from the system of democratic and responsible government established by the Australian Constitution. Lang versus the Australian Broadcasting Corporation, 1997, 189 CLR 520. And they're all from the Australian Oxford Law Dictionary. And I'm going to get into some case law shortly. Before I do, I'm going to read to you section 92 of the Constitution, of our Constitution. Trade within the Commonwealth to be free. On the imposition of uniform duties of customs, trade, commerce and intercourse among the states, whether by means of internal carriage or ocean navigation, shall be absolutely free. What that means is that you have the right to travel without taxes. You do not have to pay any taxes in order to travel. You have that right. That is section 92 of the Constitution. I'm going to say that again. On the imposition of uniform duties or taxes of customs, trade, commerce and intercourse. Well, what's intercourse? Intercourse is communication, literally a running or passing between persons or places. Commerce. There you go. So you have the right to pass between persons or places, and it is absolutely free. You do not have to pay for that. That is your right. That is section 92. Of the Australian Annotated Constitution. What is a person? So a lot of people are confused about what a person is, and according to Black's Law Dictionary, a person is a man considered according to the rank he holds in society, with all the right to which the place he holds entitles him, and the duties which he imposes. The rank he holds in the... Well, what is your rank if you are not an official employee? If you're not an official employee for the government, your rank is sovereign. You are the highest authority in this land. But if you are a person in their system, then You hold the lowest rank. You are below the police. You are below the government. The term may include artificial beings as corporations and foreign corporations. People. What is people? A state. As the people of the state of New York, a nation in its collective and political capacity. In a more restricted sense, and as generally used in constitutional law, the entire body of those citizens of a state or nation who are invested with political power for political purposes, that is, qualified voters or electors. And what is a state? A people permanently occupying a fixed territory bound together by common law habits and custom into one body politic, exercising through the medium of an organised government, independent sovereignty and control over all persons and things within its boundaries. The people of a state in their collective capacity, considered as the party wronged by a criminal deed, the public as in the title of a cause, the state. The people of a state. Or it is also the circumstances or condition of a being or thing at a given time. So that is you. That could be you. You are a being. You are a state. Okay. Sorry if this is a little bit all over the place. I'm trying to put it all together. I only had a couple of hours to do it. Common law, international law, and human rights. And I'm going to read a couple of precedents here. Police officers have no power whatsoever to arrest or detain a citizen for the purpose of questioning him or of facilitating their investigation. It matters not at all whether the questioning or the investigation is for the purpose of enabling them to ascertain whether he is the person guilty of a crime known to have been committed, or is for the purpose of enabling them to discover whether a crime has or has not been committed. If the police do so act in purported exercise of such a power, their conduct is not only destructive of civil liberties, but it is unlawful. That is Regina versus Banner, 1970, VR 240 at page 249. The full bench of the Northern Territory Supreme Court. Another one. It is an ancient principle of the common law that a person not under arrest has no obligation to stop for police or answer their questions. And there is no statute that removes that right. The conferring of such a power on a police officer would be a substantial detraction from the fundamental freedoms which have been guaranteed to the citizen by the common law for centuries. Justice Stephen Kay, Melbourne Supreme Court ruling, 25th of November 2011. So if you're driving along the road, the police have absolutely no authority to pull you over, regardless of whether it's a breathalyzer, whether it's a booze bus. It does not matter. They have absolutely no authority, and you have no obligation to pull over for them. And any thought that that you do is basically agreeing that you are now agreeing to the law that you can be, you are guilty until proven innocent. That is what you're saying. Right. It was or is common for justices of Australian courts to make decisions influenced by United States, UK and other country court decisions. So we in the Australian courts can use, we're not bound by, but we can use case law and precedents set in the United States and the UK and other country court decisions. So any court that is in the same jurisdiction or higher jurisdiction can be used. In the High Court of British Columbia, Justice Tolman, Robertson versus the Department of Public Works. The words of Justice Tolman ring most prophetic in the ears of citizens throughout Canada and the USA, as the use of the public roads has been monopolised by the very entity which has been empowered to stand guard over our freedoms, in example, that of government. So what that justice is saying is that we have employed an apparent government to stand guard and protect our roads and protect us, but what's happened is been monopolised, it's been corporatised, and now they are taking it as a money grab. Traffic infractions are not a crime. People versus Battle persons faced with an unconstitutional licensing law which purports to require a license as a prerequisite to exercise of right may ignore the law and engage with impunity in exercise of such right. Traffic infractions are not a crime. Payne versus Macy 196. A license means leave to do a thing which the licenser could prevent. The object of a license is to confer a right or power which does not exist without it. We already have the right to travel, and I'm going to get into this a little bit further. Wingfield versus Fielder. The court makes it clear that a license relates to qualifications to engage in profession, business, trade or calling. Thus, when merely travelling without compensation or profit outside of business enterprise or adventure with the corporate state, no license is required of the natural individual travelling for personal business, pleasure and transportation. The right to travel freely from state to state is a right broadly assertable against private interference as well as government action. Like the right of association, it is a virtually unconditioned personal right guaranteed by the Constitution to us all. Right, so we've got some US Supreme Court rulings here that say no license is necessary to drive an automobile on public roads. And just remember that we are under the same jurisdiction. Well, most people are under the same jurisdiction. That is why they are being locked up, or they are just being locked up completely unlawfully. But when you consent, basically majority of the courts in Australia are under US jurisdiction. They're all part of the same company, founded out of DC. Anyway, US Supreme Court and other High Court citations proving that no license is necessary for normal use of an automobile on common ways. The right of a citizen to travel upon the public highways and to transport his property thereon by horse-drawn carriage, wagon or automobile is not a mere privilege which may be permitted or prohibited at will, but a common right which he has under his right to life, liberty and the pursuit of happiness. Under this constitutional guarantee, one may therefore, under normal conditions, travel at his inclination along the public highways or in public places, and while conducting himself in an orderly and decent manner, neither interfering with nor disturbing another's rights, he will be protected not only in his person, but in his safe conduct. I'm going to read a few of these off. There's heaps of them, so I'm just going to do a few. Thompson versus Smith, 154 SE 579. 11 American Jurisprudence, Constitutional Law, Section 329, page 1135. The right of the citizen to travel upon the public highways and to transport his property thereon in the ordinary course of life and business is a common right which he has under the right to enjoy life and liberty, to acquire and possess property, and to pursue happiness and safety. It includes the right, in so doing, to use the ordinary and usual conveyances of the day, and under the existing modes of travel, including the right to drive a horse-drawn carriage or wagon thereon, or to operate an automobile thereon, for the usual or ordinary purpose of life and business. And that means that if in the future we're driving around on things that are flying, that is the common. That is what is being used in that day. We still have the right then. It doesn't matter if we're in a horse and carriage or in a car or if we're flying. We all have the right to travel. Thompson versus Smith. The right of the citizen to drive on a public street with freedom from police interference is a fundamental constitutional right. Citizens have a right to drive upon the public streets of the District of Columbia or any other city, absent a constitutionally sound reason for limiting their access. The District of Columbia is the jurisdiction which majority of the courts in Australia, I believe, are operating under, as is the Australian Tax Office, as is the government in exile we currently have. They are all founded in the District of Columbia. That's where they are created. That is where they are domiciled. And that is the jurisdiction that we are under, or that some are under, and there you have it. The use of the automobile as a necessary adjunct to the earnings of a livelihood in modern life requires us, in the interest of realism, to conclude that the right to use an automobile on the public highways partakes of the nature of a liberty within the meaning of the constitutional guarantees. I'm going to do the last one here. Berberian versus Lucia, 1958. The right to operate a motor vehicle or an automobile upon the public streets and highways is not a mere privilege. It is a right of liberty, the enjoyment of which is protected by the guarantees of the federal and state constitutions. I'm just going to do two more because I highlighted them. Adams versus City of Pocatello. A traveller has an equal right to employ an automobile as a means of transportation and to occupy the public highways with other vehicles in common use. Campbell versus Walker. The owner of an automobile has the same right as the owner of other vehicles to use the highway. A traveller on foot has the same right to the use of the public highways as an automobile or any other vehicle. So I just want to touch on that real quick. The owner of an automobile has the same right as the owner of other vehicles to use the highway. It doesn't matter what you are driving, what you are riding, how you are commuting. The right still stands. I'm just going to give you the so that these precedents that come from the wearechange.org. That is the website, wearechange.org. Even bikes. And there's heaps of these precepts. There's heaps of these case studies. Heaps of them. They're still going. I'm probably not going to read out about... Probably about 30 that I'm not going to read out. Now, on what I was saying yesterday, the extent of commercial power. And I'm reading this out because, as the video yesterday proved, we have a government in exile, which is a corporation, which is run out of the District of Columbia, which is domiciled to the District of Columbia. Extent of commercial power according to our Constitution. The commercial system of the United States has also been employed for the purpose of revenue, sometimes for the purpose of prohibition, sometimes for the purpose of retaliation and commercial reciprocacy, sometimes to lay embargoes, sometimes to encourage domestic navigation and the shipping and mercantile interest by bounties, by discriminating duties and by special preferences and privileges, and sometimes to regulate intercourse with a view to mere political objects, such as to repel aggressions, increase the pressure of war, or vindicate the rights of neutral sovereignty. Increase the pressure of war. This word war keeps coming up in this government in exile. When we look into the definitions, the word war keeps coming up, and it's coming up in relation to the commercialism or the corporations that are instituted in this country, that are currently the de facto government of this country, is a corporation. Increase the pressure of war. If we are at war, I'd like to know, because that's not what the people are being told. However, when we go into the facts, as per the video yesterday and today, it seems that somebody is waging war against us by way of encroachment and infringement upon our rights, and we are happily and glad, ignorantly giving up our rights, and it's disturbing. And just so you are aware, you can sue any company or corporation, whether it's big or small, the same as a small corporation. You can sue a large corporation or a corporation sole. A foreign company carrying on business in any part of the British Dominions, which is what our de facto government is doing at this time. They are a foreign company carrying on business in Australia or this British Dominion, through a branch of office situated there. I'm just going to start again. A foreign company carrying on business in any part of the British Dominions through a branch office situated there, also known as the Australian Tax Office, the Australian Consulate, the Australian Government. Through a branch office situated there, is liable to be sued locally in the same manner as a local corporation. Thus, an American company incorporated by American law in the United States had a place of business in England where it de facto carried on business. Well, that is what we have going on in Australia right now. What they are explaining right here is what we have in Australia right now. Thus, an American company incorporated by American law in the United States, and make no mistake, the de facto government that is running Australia at this time is an American company. And I showed you that last night. I showed you the proof from the Dunn's report. All the Commonwealth of Australia, the Consulate General, they're all registered in the District of Columbia. That is where they are domiciled. That is where they are founded. So thus an American company incorporated by American law in the United States had a place of business in England where it de facto carried on business. Although its manufacturing and also its principal place of business where the meetings of its directors and shareholders were held were in America. That's what's going on right now in this country and in America. And what is the definition of war? Well, it's armed hostilities between especially nations conflict. B, it's a specific conflict or the period of time during which such conflict exists. Or C, this one is important. This is what the government is trying to pass in legislation right now, what they tried to pass yesterday. C, for the definition of war, the suspension of international law, etc., during such a conflict. Why are they trying to suspend international law, international treaties from coming into Australia and being put out into the public? If we are not at war, why are they trying to suspend that? Why are they trying to stop that? Why are they trying to the suspension of international law? Also, hostility or contention between people, groups, etc. War of words. Now I sort of mashed up a little bit there, so to do with Brendan's case, I put all the case law and the rights that he has according to our Constitution, according to the Human Rights Declaration, according to the Oxford Law Dictionary. And now I'm going to read out the definition of injustice from the Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. Injustice, the withholding or denial of justice. In law, almost invariably applied to the act, fault or omission of a court as distinguished from that of an individual. Brendan is currently being held unlawfully, as far as I've been told, and the facts that I've received. That is an injustice. And then we have the Australian Oxford Law Dictionary, denial of natural justice. Failure to accord the requirements of natural justice, procedural fairness, occurring when a person is denied a fair hearing, the decision maker exhibits bias, or a lay observer may reasonably suspect bias on the part of the decision maker. At common law, a denial of natural justice affecting a person's rights, interests, or legitimate expectations is a jurisdictional error. A denial of natural justice is also a statutory ground for judicial review. Example, Administrative Decision, Judicial Review Act 1977, C, Section 5(1)(a). Not just Brendan, there are many people having denial of natural justice. Not because we have a de jure government looking out for our best interest, but because we have a de facto government in exile who is here to take our money, to run this country into the ground, to bankrupt this country in order for the owners of the District of Columbia to take ownership of this country. Understand that the banks that are running this thing are in the District of Columbia. The people there, the Australian Tax Office registered in the District of Columbia, the Australian Government registered in District of Columbia. It's all registered in District of Columbia, except for the Parliament of the Commonwealth of Australia, which is the legitimate de jure government. Now, we've spoken about the wrongs that have happened and that are happening. Now, I'm going to read out a cause of action. The fact or combination of facts that a plaintiff must establish in order to demonstrate that he or she has a right to sue. A cause of action arises from some wrongful act or breach, example in tort or contract, where some common law or statutory relationship exists between the parties. The plaintiff must plead facts which establish that a case can be made out. A cause of action will be sustainable if the plaintiff has a type of complaint legally known to the law of the forum in which it is brought. So it must be brought to the right court, the right jurisdiction. Example, the High Court, if it's a common law jurisdiction matter, and standing to be heard. The court has jurisdiction to entertain or hear the matter, and there is an enforceable remedy or other response that the court is empowered to make. So Brendan has a cause of action. Anyone who is being wronged unlawfully has a cause of action. I would encourage you all to take that cause of action and put in for the damages. Damages is a sum of money paid in compensation for damage suffered or vindication of a claimant's rights in contract or tort actions. Privacy. Just don't want to get into that right now. Restitution, a remedy that restores an innocent party to the position they were in before a loss arising for some transaction between the parties to the proceeding. The remedy rests on the principle of unconscionability or unjust enrichment. In either case, if the court were to allow the situation to go unremedied, unconscionable conduct is not checked, and the defendant would also benefit unfairly. And then there's restitutionary damages, Australian Law Dictionary, a monetary remedy for common law wrongs in which the amount of the defendant's gain that was attributable to the plaintiff, example, by using the plaintiff's property, is returned to the plaintiff as damages. Then you have punitive damages, and you have exemplary damages, aggravated damages. The list goes on. We all have that right to sue any corporation, any company. That is your right. The same as you would sue anyone that ripped you off, any company that ripped you off. You have the right to do that to the company that is running this country. And I'm just going to briefly finish up with this statement. Qui per alium facit per sipsum facer virtur, and that is Latin for he who does a thing by an agent is considered as doing it himself. If you are enforcing a law or a policy on behalf of somebody else without knowing whether what you're enforcing is lawful or not, regardless, he who does a thing by an agent is considered as doing it himself. Sorry, I need to correct myself. What that means is if you give an order to someone to carry out an act, you are considered as doing it yourself. And one more. Qui potest e debe vetare jubeta. He who can and ought to forbid a thing, if he do not forbid it, Direxit. That is out of the Black's Law Dictionary, 4th edition. That is for anyone in any position of authority or decision making. He who can and ought to forbid a thing, if he do not forbid it, he directs it. That's kind of all I've got on that. I hope that made sense and you got something from it. I sort of was putting everything together for Brendan, and a few other things kept coming in regarding yesterday's policy they're trying to pass and all that sort of thing, and then some rights that I wanted to touch on just for everyone watching. But I hope that made sense and that we got something out of that. I'm going to go have a look at some comments. Thank you, Adi. Danielle. RBA will put up interest rates soon, bankrupt more and more Australians. Yeah, it's coming. Don't worry about that. And my fear is that most people will have absolutely no idea what to do when the time comes, and they have absolutely no idea what to do now. You know, the time is already here, and we're already being encroached upon and infringed upon, violated. The rights, this concerns every single Australian, every single person in the world, because we are not the only ones. And one thing I've really got to say, now there is this common misconception amongst Australians that we are the lucky country, and geographically we are, but politically we are far from it. And when we have a government that is continuously taking away our rights, taking away our privileges, and just on that, Article 25 of the Human Rights Declaration, everyone has a right to a standard of living adequate for the health and well-being of himself and his family, including food, clothing, housing and medical care, and necessary social services, and the rights to security in the event of unemployment, sickness, disability, widowhood, old age, or other lack of livelihood in circumstances beyond his control. That's talking about pensions, that's talking about Centrelink, that is talking about payments. I lost where I was at, I can't remember why I got onto that. But anyway, yeah, my thoughts are really going out to Brendan at the moment, and I'm going to be putting together some something for him, and I hope it carries with it the weight of law that it's supposed to, and yeah, we'll see. We'll see how far gone our system really is. Yeah, it's pretty scary. Yeah. Jason, we are definitely at war. Well, it seems that war has been waged upon us. The unsuspecting people. But, you know, most people are happy with that and don't want to know about it, which is okay. You know, I have no personal interest in anybody else's personal life. I really, it doesn't worry me. You know, if people want to give up their rights, I'm happy for them to do that. And but it does worry me on the account of my children and their children, and I just don't know where it's going to go if it continues the way it is. I mean, it can't continue the way it is, but it's like the more people that are waking up, we also get people that are just getting dumber and dumber. You know, it's an interesting time we're living in anyway. I'm so tired. Comments have disappeared. Maritime law. Jay Webber, the laws we're talking about are changed as soon as you cross borders. No, they're all subject to the same jurisdiction as far as I'm aware. And actually the laws that I was reading out account for and actually talk about crossing borders and changing states. They actually specifically mention the travel and freedom of movement between states. So, yeah, I don't think they can be changed. Operating under colour of law. Yeah, that's right. Operating under the colour of their uniform. Anyway, I hope that someone got something out of that, and it's some useful information. I'm going to go and have some dinner because I'm hungry and tired. That is why we need to stick together. Absolutely, we really do need to stick together and work together. And you know, this is how they do it. You know, they all congregate, they talk about all this stuff, they get the best lawyers and all that sort of stuff. The thing is that it doesn't matter how good the lawyers are, if you are presenting the law and you have a judge or judges or scrap that, a jury, let's say a jury that you're entitled to, and you educate that jury on their rights as well as your rights, then that changes the game. I guess it's all about educating the masses, and basically that's why I still pay these license fees and these unlawful exactions of tax, because the majority of people still have no idea what their rights are and what is going on. It's a dangerous situation. And I'm doing it under duress, you know, because I fear what might happen should I not. I fear that I won't be able to research this stuff anymore. So I feel like it's easier, not just easier, but it's wiser to be outside and to be fighting this from the outside in. But I don't know. A big part of me, you know, wants to go, nah, you know, just do what's right and what your rights are. And then a big part of me says, well, you know, under this regime that we're in right now, evidently on what's been happening is, regardless of rights and law, people are just being unlawfully taken. So it's a bit of a predicament, but I don't know. I'm still trying to figure it all out. Anyway, thanks for watching. Happy What day is it today? I don't even know what day it is. Anyway, happy today. And thanks for watching again. Thanks for your time. Please share, download this clip converter. Just copy the link and put it into the clip converter link. Go to clipconverter.cc and you can download this and store it on your computer, upload it to YouTube, do whatever you want with it. This is free information for everybody, and it must remain that way. So thanks again for watching. Peace.